Welcome to another This Week in Coworking discussion.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to the This Week in Co-working podcast feed. Once again, I am your host, Hector Kolonas, and today I am joined by an absolute legend from the access industry, Lee Odess. Lee, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you, buddy. It's good to see you, and a long time coming to do this, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Our absolute pleasure having you here. As you said, you've been wanting to do this for a while, but there's so much M&A happening in the access control world that we both got together and we're like, let's just do it now. Let's talk about what's happening, how it impacts co-working businesses, and all of that. But before we get into what is happening in the world, let's just reintroduce you to the folks in the co-working world who maybe haven't come across your work or haven't put your face behind the brands. What is it you do in the world of access, Lee?
No, I appreciate it. So I'm CEO of something called the Access Control Collective, which is a handful of companies that focus on the physical security industry. And just like it sounds, I personally focus heavily on the access control industry side of it, video, identity stuff also, but my sort of where I grew up and spend my time is there. We have three parts of the business. We have content creation. So I do a newsletter, podcast, we do in-person events, and that part. We also produce for a handful of people within the physical security space that are going beyond just access control. So we're leveraging our infrastructure to help them get messages out. We have a community, a physical security Slack group that's grown large. It's global at this point. A lot of people that nerd out around access control and physical security in general, wide variety of different people. And then we do consulting work. We work with a handful of brands across the ecosystem, doing a whole lot of different things. So yeah, those are the three things that we do.
Love that. And we're going to drop all the links in the show notes so that people can
Great. Thank you.
get signed up to that. Who's it useful to, other than people who geek out about security and
Yeah.
access? Who would find the things you do pretty interesting?
Yeah, so I say it's the people that are in security or security adjacent. And
Mhm.
more, especially in the built environment, security is utility. So anybody who is responsible for making selection or interested in it, there's value there. We have a lot of end users, developers, co-working companies, people that are in there that are making service and product decisions on a regular basis.
Mhm.
This is sort of the online water cooler for that. And then, yeah, you can get deeper depending on what you want. Our weekly podcast is a 15-minute at most, sort of here's what's happened this week, kind of like what you do,
Yep.
but specifically in security. So if you want to just sort of get your allotment of security vitamins, that's where you can get it from.
Love that. And the thing is, when a lot of people hear security, they automatically go to panic stations. Or is
Of
it you
course.
just telling them, screaming at them every Friday, this is what could go wrong, this is what could happen in your space? Or is there actually good news in there as well?
No, it's so we focus purposely on the today forward, the changes that have happened, the opportunity that's there. Sure, whenever there's disruption and change, there's winners and losers, if you would, but we predominantly focus on the opportunities that exist and the changes that are going on. Yes, there is an aspect of safety and security, which is, bad things happen. That's why we exist as an industry. But there's also this transition that's happening around the opportunities that present themselves by having infrastructure that can do more than what is
Mhm.
the keeping bad people out part.
And it does come back down to what you're saying. It's about the experience, but it's also about hospitality. A lot of the conversations we've had lately are about how hospitality is just really good tech doing things invisibly. So people can kind of feel the space, access the space, feel safe in the space without them having to physically pin in codes and things like that. So it's going to be really interesting to kind of explore how that's changing with you. But starting on a bit of a sour point, right? A couple of years ago now, all of a sudden, one pretty popular door access system stopped working overnight. They went bankrupt. They were no longer running their servers. People couldn't access spaces. This is what's sitting at the back of people's heads when they think about access control and the fact that everything's in the cloud and that they're paying subscriptions for things, bringing us to where we are today, where there's a lot more M&A happening. There's a lot of companies merging, acquiring, being acquired by potential competitors. This is a framework that the co-working world is looking at, the M&A access control. My question for you, Lee, is why are we seeing so much M&A right now in like the security sphere?
Yeah. So I'll speak specifically to the co-working space is kind of interesting. It's one of those spaces that every startup company, when they do a presentation, there's always a slide of logos and adoption. And one of the areas of early adoption, no matter where I'm at in the world talking to whoever, is co-working. That brings positives and concerns along with it when you're early adopting. That said,
Mhm.
there are mature companies as well that work in that space, and you're seeing trends that are driving why that would happen. To answer your question around the M&A side is we've been somewhat of a nascent industry, a cottage industry. It's 10 to 12 billion depending on who you talk to has been the numbers that our industry has come up with to size it. I think it's complete garbage. I've been documented saying so, but we don't have a lot of good data, so we use bad data and all hallucinate around it, which is fine. So let's hallucinate that it's a $12 billion global industry outside of China, everywhere else. That's a cottage industry that has predominantly been about keeping bad people out. And it's been
Mhm.
project based. What you see is the markets, and it's basically 30 years old, by the way,
Yeah.
also. So you're actually starting to see what's interesting is an entire generation physically die because they've been around for quite a while. To change, technology change, all the things that are influencing what you would see phase changes of just industries happening to ours as well. One of them is capital markets, the PE firms are coming in and seeing this as an opportunity when, you know, if you have an application, a technology that you talked about, which I can argue there's also a physical side of it that's important on the hospitality side. But you have all these companies that came in that said, we're going to change the world. You can order your lattes from our app. You can book rooms for your app. And then fundamentally what has happened, a lot of those apps have turned into access control companies because when it fundamentally comes down to the utility of getting in or keeping people out is a fundamental utility like water, electricity, and the rest of it that goes in there. It's also what drives engagement on a regular basis into the application. So a lot of these companies that had this idea of, you know, where they were raising a lot of capital ended up being access control companies. The venture capital world, the private equity world saw this and is now putting money into it. And because of that, it is changing the incentives of our industry. Where before it was like our industry was annuity business. You put 30-year-old hardware in and you're there forever. And our
Mhm.
expectations were like, hey, keep people out. And for all intents and purpose, we did a good job of it. If you look at globally, like we've done a really good job. Now, though, the expectations are changing of what the expectations of this utility to go in, and it's super sticky. And now you're starting to see SaaS models get introduced, and you're
Mhm.
which is causing capital to come in, which is causing strategic buyers to buy people as well as companies to change hands, and that's what you see.
Really, really interesting. And that's kind of what we saw when you broke the news about Brivo and Eagle Eye Networks, right? They merged not because they were competitors, but they were two parts of the ands, right? One was purely the door access physical, and then Eagle Eye Networks was kind of the
Video.
surveillance and data from surveillance. What did you take away from that M&A?
Well, I'll add even more to that. They have the same
Yeah.
owner. So
Oh, okay.
Dean Draco owned both companies. Former guy that started Barracuda Networks, frankly, and then so went public, left, and then started these two companies. Well, a lot of them. So he owned both of them, and he brought them together. What it shows, though, more than anything, is this idea. And we wrote that one of the trends that's happening is video and access are one and the same at this point. Because if you layer it up a bit, it's about data and it's about enterprise software. Now the hardware is a little bit different in those, but you're starting to see even that come together where readers have cameras and whatnot, right? It makes a lot of sense for them. It makes them an even larger company. You can imagine they're on a track to go public. Like a lot of the things of why they were running two marketing departments, two sales departments. Now that's one. A lot of customer overlap to where, if you're an integrator, you had two SKUs, now it's one. Like there's a lot of ERP systems, so it made a lot of sense, but it does show you where the sort of peanut butter and jelly of opportunity here is that those two things come tightly together. There's even more that are coming together, but those are just straight sort of strikes of saying this needs to be together.
That is really interesting. I'm glad you brought up the elevation point because one of the things that I'm always advocating to executives, especially in the co-working industry, which is 10 years younger than the access control industry, is that data is, the new fuel. A lot of folks are like, well, we have swipe cards, we have Wi-Fi metrics, we have check-ins, but they don't correlate, they don't work together. What does it look like currently in the data landscape of access control? Are there silos? Is there an effort to kind of have a unified data set? What does that look like?
Yeah, the answer to that would be yes. And it's an and conversation versus or. And the reason why I mean that is we're literally going through disruption right now. And because of that, the two worlds exist at the same time. You got new players that are coming in that are building the infrastructure of cloud, AI, mobile, data, Coventry, data access, like APIs, like all of that stuff are fundamental just architectures of how they build. Then
Hmm.
you have existing legacy that are either not doing anything and happy being big fish in small pond or growing 5 to 8% a year, keeping bad people out. And then you have ones that are transforming and adding on and maybe killing some things and adding. So you're seeing it change. I focus with a lot of the people that see change as what it needs to be, and we talk about that.
Hmm.
So there are great examples of organizations. That's the biggest takeaway in the co-working space, in any space, frankly. What you could do now is there's sort of a redefinition of expectations of what you should expect the system to do. A
Yep.
lot of our industry said no, you can't do that, and they're like, why? And they're like, safety, security. And somebody within the organization was like, all right, I don't want to be responsible for someone getting shot or stabbed, so I'll leave it to you, the experts.
Hmm.
Now you're getting that plus the ability to say yes to what do you want? Operational efficiencies? Do you want revenue generation now built off of this? Do you want whatever? And frankly, going deep into a vertical to deliver additional value. So if I'm a co-working space where there's probably more that don't have two things that other big ones have, time and money. So
Yep.
if you're a co-working space that doesn't have time or money, your expectation is your system that you're selecting can help you with both time and money. And you should be able to believe that the system of choice that you're going to pick, even if it means you have to rip and replace,
Yeah.
they exist.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something we keep hearing, and it does come back to that 30-year-old hardware that's already on their doors, on their walls. We are hearing of newer players. Obviously, some players are allowing you to use whatever you already had and kind of layering on top of that. What are you most excited about that co-working spaces should know about with regards to what's coming next in access control?
Yeah, I mean, one that's just straightforward is it's always been hard to electrify and control the interior doors. So things of the adoption of like wireless technology, the sort of miniature devices, the ease of installation, that type of stuff.
Mhm.
And also, by the way, this depends where you're at in the world. So because there are areas where, if I look at like the Japanese marketplace for co-working, the culture there is a little bit more open to adopting like QR codes and things like
Mhm.
that, and maybe what I would call less robust commercial products than say here in North America, where they want, if it's heavy, then it must be good type of a thing.
Yep.
Um, but I can tell you the idea around devices being added to add value in a space that primarily was about the shell of the building. I'll get you in, you come
Mhm.
up to a system that signs you in, and then here's your key. The days of that, you can be fully electronic and it's there. On
Mhm.
top of that, there you should be excited with the ability that there are middleware companies and there are devices and there are software that can sit on top of some of the infrastructure that you have. Not all yet, but it's getting there because there's also some standards and things coming that our industry has never really adopted. You'll be able to start to not have to worry about like what type of phone do you have? It's like, no, the phone works. Like you don't have to
Mhm.
think about it. So what has been somewhat cobbled together systems to deliver an experience, I think you'll start to get like a real vertically focused experience that some of these companies were doing before. Like I know Salto, I'll give them a credit as being someone early on into this space and that was adding a lot of value. Or Essence in the UK was very Wi-Fi to now access
Mhm.
control, very smart. More people are verticalizing to be able to deliver solutions to specifically the space to deliver value to what you need, not just keeping people out, but letting
Yeah.
the right people in. Fundamentally, co-working is a bit of both. That's why I
Yeah.
think it's so dynamic. Is that as much as I want to keep people out, I probably am like really worried about letting the right people in. Because if I'm paying to be there and I'm standing out in New York City and it's raining and cold and I can't get in this place that I pay you decent amount for,
Yeah.
I'm probably going to get pissed.
But it's also really interesting because the types of products that co-working spaces are selling are becoming more dynamic, more on demand, more transactional. And that is not only accessing the building, But when I'm in the building, the spaces are now monetizing how you use the space,
Yep.
rushing towards a kind of microtransaction model.
Yep.
And the only way that really works is if you can almost seamlessly measure utilization without, allowing an opportunity to be lied to.
Yep.
And that's where the census plays with the Lumo and some other players are playing with their devices. And it is really because once you're in the building, does it still fall under access control in your opinion? If you're using it to measure utilization as opposed to don't let people into a specific space.
Yes, it's also starting to move into the IT side and the service providers. So, depending on who you hire to specify, manage, configure, and repair would define who it is. Everyone from locksmiths all the way up to your SIs that are more traditional, like Workday and Salesforce type people, down to locksmiths and everybody in between. So,
Mhm.
this comes back to you having a point of view as a operator of co-working spaces. How do you want this to work? There's an aspect of it, yes, of safety, security, and that's sort of where it starts, and you should. And then the expectations then, build on that. Like, I want people to be able to use this to get in. I want people to be able to use this to request to get in. Great. I then want people to pay with this, and I want this to show me where the conference room is, and I want them to lock the conference room when someone's in there or unlock it, whatever. Like, then that's how it builds. And then next thing you know, it's like, all right, so this sort of system that was keeping people out and locking and unlocking is now expected to go do other things. So I then have to maybe look at who the products are that I use with and I specify. Maybe I need to start caring about doors, or maybe I cared about the aesthetics of aluminum and glass. Now I actually care about how it operates as well. The lock that's
Mhm.
specifically on there. And then it's like, is it retrofit, new construction? What model do I want? You have CapEx models, you have OpEx models now. Like, there's a lot that's more dynamic than just a spec sheet of a build out like that.
Yeah,
That's why it's no better time than now in the past 30 years has existed to rethink the way that you want your access control system to add value, keep people safe. No better time than now.
I love that. And I'm going to dig a little bit deeper into your opinion about that. Is you mentioned a whole bunch of things. There's normally kind of best in class providers across all the things you just mentioned.
Yeah.
Do you normally lean towards a modular stack in which you use best in class solutions for each piece, or go for the more monolithic play that CRE is more used to, where it's one vendor, one invoice, and they kind of do everything?
Yeah, that is a choice, frankly, of how an operator wants to operate, pay, build. Like, so I'm an advocate of either. I'm an advocate of, yes, you're seeing a platform approach happen, but I'm also a believer in best in class, to where there should be openness to be able to make choice of what I want. Now, I could advocate for the siloed closed system because of performance reasons, with APIs to allow you to go out and to go do those things. I can also make an advocate for the open platform because there's value there. It's sort of like, do you like Macs or do you like Windows device, right? Do you Android or iOS? Pluses and minuses on both.
Mhm.
Now, I would usually, when people come to me and ask me, what should I do? It's like, all right, so tell me a bit more about your use case. Like, tell me about what matters to you. Where are you located? How do you operate? Right? Those things would dictate, what are you currently using? What's your risk appetite for newer company? Like, all of that stuff would come into what would be an answer to determine what you're bet. I can make a strong case to you of why a legacy company who's not open would make sense based off of your strategy as an operator.
Yes.
The good news is you have choice. Historically, your choice was, I'm going to take this product that was built for an airport and you're going to use less of it to be applied to a co-working space, and then we're going to squint to try to make it work for you.
Mhm.
Like, those days, or you're just told no, right? Those days are gone.
Yeah.
You now have opportunity and choice. That's why the best place is probably to start with a whiteboard.
Mhm. I know that you're an expert because whenever you ask someone a yes or no question and they ask whether it depends, means that they've had this question asked a bunch of times and gotten it right and wrong a few times to
Sure.
know that, you know, it does depend and you have to ask more questions before you can answer the question.
Right.
And I can feel consultants all across the world celebrating right now.
I'm
Um,
here for you.
all right, so there's two last areas that comes up a lot in my conversations with co-working space operators, and they involve essentially what happens after you're inside the building. The one is sensors and kind of detecting and using that as an amalgamation of the data that is used to check people in and out of the building. And the other is the threat of AI. Let's start first with, sensors. What are you seeing that's interesting or concerning with sensors?
Yeah, and again, this depending on where I'm at in the world, I'll answer this. But I'm seeing we actually have a paper, an essay coming out around sensors,
Okay.
because I believe our industry has gotten bored with them. We call them readers and controllers and locks. When I actually think I don't know, since 1999, we've been talking about, for me at least, and I know it's been before that, we were talking about IoT. I actually think we're starting to realize some of the things that we've wanted to from IoT actually coming to. So this idea around hardware being actually a sensor. I don't care if it's the light, the thermostat, the lock, it's a sensor. It happens to do and have an expectation to perform certain tasks, but just like my software, you should have an expectation that your hardware can perform to sense whatever that might be, triggering a door to lock, uh, packaging information and sharing it to other things. That's where I feel sensors are currently right now. Now, we have, like, I'm seeing a whole crop of companies come out that are remind me of like Arduino boards in a lot of cases, that are calling themselves controllers, door controllers, because they come from the security space. But anybody can take this device and probably use it to go do a lot of other stuff because it's a
Mhm.
microcomputer. So as computing goes up, power consumption goes down, expectations of things happen of what I want that thing on the edge to go do. Now, to give you an even more specific answer around sensors, we're seeing an uptick in biometric facial authentication. Now, again, certain markets in North America, a little more hesitation. Other marketplaces, not so much. But they have a camera. It can be used as much as do QR codes in certain parts of the world, to the ability for me just to seamlessly walk up to a space. It do facial authentication, not recognition. Notice the difference in the language.
Yep.
Authentication to verify that it's me, and then trigger automation on the back end to create an experience of what I would want, opting in, doing it privately, all of that good stuff. The dystopian side gets, you know, organizes better and runs. The utopian side of this technology doesn't always do a great job because our industry sucks at marketing and telling stories, but that's for another podcast. But you're starting to see these devices roll out with adoption because they can deliver high levels of assurance with high levels of throughput plus automation on the back end. And some people are getting more comfortable with that type of technology,
Mhm.
to where they're like, all right, I'll opt into this to create. So like that's a sensor.
Yep.
Yeah.
I remember when we first started experimenting with sensors back in a co-working space in 2016,
Sure.
and the whole concern there was, well, you have too much data about us. When we go to the toilet. I'm like, we're not going to look at that data. So
That's
yeah,
not what
it's
I'm worried
definitely
about.
shifting. We're more concerned about you keeping you safe and making sure the space is being well utilized and can stay profitable. But that's really interesting. Let's kind of switch. You said dystopians. We have to bring in AI. I know from like my previous life in cybersecurity, AI is a huge threat vector. Is there any implications that co-working space operators should think about when it comes to AI with regards to like access control and the other sensors and hardware IoT systems in their space?
Yeah, I mean, everything that is normal outside of access control should be applied to access control when it comes to that. There are bespoke outcomes that can be really horrifically bad that are different than just straight digital. So, yeah, all of the same requirements, expectations, beliefs, your processes should be applied the same way you do on the IT side should be applied here. There are also areas where you may not touch as an operator of a co-working space that you will feel the impacts of in a positive way, like configuration of systems,
Mhm.
instead of having somebody come sit on a bucket and program the system. The idea that there can, 80% of it could be a touch of a button. That if you said, I'm a co-working space, I've got a data set big enough that I can do it. Natural language processing around sort of the conversational side of the system of saying, hey, add Tom as a user type of a thing. I'm more of an optimist here. I think there are far more positive outcomes that can come from it. Yes, there are bad actors and bad things are going to happen, but again, I would apply the same caution, the same level of awareness and process that you would have to normally. There's no reason to treat this any different. Maybe higher levels of assurance again, because people getting stabbed and shot is horrific. Um, but it also, I would say, should be an area that you are applying more resources and time to because of the high level of risk that is there. But yeah, all the same rules apply.
Yep. And there's no way I'm going to let you end on such a, sad point. So I'm going to bring it back to the benefits of AI. Like, obviously, I am a huge fan of apps as APIs becoming the future, as you said, being able for a system to tell another system, add this user as, give them the access to this meeting room, this office, whatever. But are there any, unconventional AI implementations with regards to access that you're excited about?
Yeah, there's a hierarchy of change that's happening. So we're going from cards to mobile, and then now on the AI side, on the user experience end of it. So two places. The user experience side of my ability, if you think about it, buildings have always been set up, especially in co-working and anywhere in the built environment. Every time I go to a place, it's like the first time I've ever been there. It doesn't know who I am. The experience typically sucks because our industry's identity is built around this idea. I'm going to put up more barriers in order to, uh, keep you out of the building. That is intrinsically sort of in violent against an experience of people who you want to have come and it be welcoming. The same thing is that people want to feel safe and not only be safe, but feel it as well. This ability to be able to communicate properly, especially as the users are dynamic in a space where, most office buildings, I know who predominantly majority of the people are that are going there. Yes, visitors. Yes, new employees. Yes, people taking care of the space that are there. Sure. But a lot of the people that go habitually to a place over and over again, it's a relationship that I do know who they are. Now, if in a use case where, if you think about like in places of worship, their whole thing is like letting everybody in as of right. So they've got a different dynamic of threat vector than say co-working where it's about like the people that are going there. You can imagine a case where I can start to have a relationship now, especially with digital interfaces on the front, like visitor management systems in your phone and your hand. This relationship with this space can grow even bigger to where now I go there and it knows me, it welcomes me, it triggers this waterfall afterwards that's dynamic. I can talk to it. I can say, hey, my boss is in town. I want to have them have access to the space and they can work you through there. That to me is amazing. And we haven't had that. We frankly haven't been allowed to go do that. But now you're starting to see more and more of that happen. I think it's going to be wild when I could do it. The other one I'll tell you is there's always been this consortium of co-working spaces as well as the big companies that do it. This ability for me to go seamlessly through the world wherever I am and get access to things and to be able to just have a better work life experience. I
Mhm.
think we fundamentally, like, you think about how much time we spend going in and out of places. It's a lot on a daily basis. We've looked at it. You typically do like 6 to 10, and
Yeah.
every single one of your house, the gym, the coffee shop, I go pick my kids up at school, whatever it might be.
Mhm.
And every time you go there, every single day, it's like the first time you've ever been there. And that sucks. So I
Yep.
think we're on the cusp of having very different relationships and value creation opportunities with a cohort of people that frankly we've never had before. And I think that's exciting. And AI will play a big part in that.
I absolutely love that, Lee. And I definitely want to dig deeper into that with you, probably on another podcast, maybe in person sometime soon, because that is a topic that we're touching on with all the execs we work with over at Syncaroo. Lee, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for giving us this insight into the access control world. I will drop your details in the show notes.
Thank you.
For everyone listening in, we will be back in your podcast feed shortly. Lee, thanks again.
You too. Thank you for the opportunity and all the work you do. So thank you.